The year 1943, while marked by significant strategic gains for the Allies, also revealed a growing and silent crisis in the skies over German-occupied Western Europe. The fundamental challenge lay in reconnaissance, the essential ability to monitor enemy movements, production capabilities, and hidden defense networks. The aircraft initially entrusted with this pivotal role, primarily the British Supermarine Spitfire PR.11, an unarmed photo-reconnaissance variant, and the American Lockheed F-5 Lightning, an early adaptation of the P-38, were rapidly losing their effectiveness in the face of evolving mission demands. Operational protocols required these planes to cruise at altitudes between 30,000 and 32,000 feet, roughly 9.1 to 9.7 kilometers. Once regarded as the safe upper limit for sustained flight, this altitude range had by 1943 become a prime hunting ground for the Luftwaffe. German aviation engineers had made remarkable strides, particularly in turbo-supercharger technology for their top-tier fighters. Aircraft such as the Focke-Wulf FW-190A and the more menacing Messerschmitt Bf-109G underwent continuous modifications, achieving operational ceilings of up to 35,000 feet. This seemingly modest altitude gap of just 3,000 to 5,000 feet often meant the difference between survival and destruction. The grim consequences were reflected in the casualty reports received by Colonel Daniel Kingsley at the 8th Air Force Headquarters. Reconnaissance missions targeting high-value assets, like the Ruhr Valley's industrial base, critical synthetic oil refineries, and suspicious coastal construction projects, faced catastrophic losses. At their worst, some photographic reconnaissance squadrons reported attrition rates of 40% to 50% within a matter of weeks. Each downed aircraft signified not only the tragic loss or capture of a highly skilled pilot but also the irretrievable loss of the mission's vital intelligence, the film that was the entire objective. These setbacks resulted in a dual crisis: diminishing manpower and a dangerous gap in actionable intelligence. To Kingsley, it was clear that if reconnaissance operations continued within this perilous altitude range, their aircraft would remain easy targets, vulnerable to interception by Luftwaffe fighters needing only a few thousand feet to reach engagement height. What was urgently required was an aircraft capable of escaping this kill zone and ascending into a true zone of immunity. This machine had to possess not just the ability to fly high but to reach altitudes completely beyond the grasp of Germany's most advanced fighters, effectively rendering them powerless without firing a single shot. Achieving invisibility through sheer altitude became the foremost strategic demand of the air war over Europe. The existential challenge confronting the Allied reconnaissance initiative was ultimately addressed not through the development of an entirely new, untested design, but rather by radically transforming an existing aircraft, the Lockheed P-38 Lightning, engineered by the renowned Clarence Johnson at the Skunk Works. The P-38 was a standout innovation with its distinctive twin-boom, twin-engine structure. At its heart were powerful Allison engines equipped with two-stage turbo-superchargers, making it a high-altitude performance leader. Despite its strengths, the standard P-38, equipped with an arsenal of 4.50 caliber machine guns and a 20 mm cannon mounted in the nose, was deemed too heavy for the soaring altitudes required for modern reconnaissance. The solution involved a daring overhaul, stripping the aircraft down to its essentials and recasting it as a high-altitude intelligence platform. This transformation necessitated the removal of all weapons and the corresponding ammunition from the central nacelle. By shedding this weight, engineers achieved significant gains in altitude capability, converting every pound saved into additional operational height. In place of the armament, engineers installed an advanced system of aerial cameras mounted on stabilizing anti-vibration supports to ensure crisp image quality at high speeds and extreme distances. 4 Fairchild K-17 cameras formed the backbone of this configuration. 2 were mounted vertically for precise mapping, while the other 2 were angled obliquely, offering three-dimensional perspectives critical for discerning camouflage targets or gauging structural height. A single K-22 camera, positioned further back and fitted with a long lens, was dedicated to capturing highly detailed imagery of strategic targets, such as factories or concealed facilities. The modifications resulted in the creation of the F-5 Lightning, a machine purpose-built for performance and reconnaissance. Delivered to operational theaters with minimal paint, often just a polished metal finish, the aircraft earned the evocative nickname Silver Fish. This bare-metal approach reduced aerodynamic drag, while optimizing its climb rate and maximum ceiling. The F-5 embodied a groundbreaking concept in aerial warfare. Intelligence, meticulously gathered with precision and reliability, proved to be a force multiplier far greater than sheer weaponry. Its unarmed design reflected a deliberate strategy, eschewing combat in favor of evasion at stratospheric altitudes to achieve its mission. The remarkable promise of the stripped-down, high-performance F-5 Lightning was immediately stifled by an adversary far tougher than any enemy in the skies: bureaucratic inertia and the uncompromising rigidity of Army Air Force specifications. The AAF's leadership and engineering oversight teams operated under strict adherence to meticulously defined operational guidelines, which were based on conservative, safe envelopes established for the Allison engines and the existing life support systems. These guidelines imposed an inflexible ceiling of 35,000 feet for sustained flight, dictated more by paperwork than practical potential. From the perspective of the rule-bound regulators, flying above this altitude amounted to a reckless dismissal of three critical technical risks that they were unwilling to endorse. First, engine performance and flame-out risk. At altitudes surpassing 35,000 feet, the thinning air severely taxed the F-5's turbo-superchargers, pushing them to their operational limit. Efficiency dropped precipitously, introducing a significant risk of engine flameout. In the biting cold and thin atmosphere of such altitudes, an engine failure left little chance for recovery or restart, almost certainly resulting in the loss of both pilot and aircraft. Second, pilot safety and hypoxia. The oxygen systems approved by the AAF were designed to ensure proper oxygen delivery at altitudes up to 38,000 feet. Prolonged exposure above 40,000 feet exposed pilots to the ever-present danger of hypoxia, a stealthy threat that first induces euphoria before degrading cognitive abilities, coordination, and ultimately leading to unconsciousness. Any operation outside the defined safety margins posed an unacceptably high liability for command officials. Third, mechanical reliability in extreme cold. Temperatures at these altitudes frequently dropped below -50 degrees Celsius, wreaking havoc on unpressurized systems. Hydraulic fluids thickened, control mechanisms stiffened, and moisture would instantly crystallize in fuel and oil lines. These conditions could lead to catastrophic malfunctions and potentially jeopardize the plane's structure during descent. When faced with appeals to extend the F-5's operational limits, the official stance remained unwavering. Altering specifications required lengthy testing and certification processes. They firmly held that no procedures breaching factory standards or AAF protocols could be sanctioned. These rigid policies were a constant roadblock for innovators like Ted Nelson, as fears of bureaucratic accountability eclipsed the pressing demands of wartime realities. For pilots on the front lines, this bureaucratic deadlock meant grappling with an unenviable dilemma: adhere to safety protocols at the expense of survival against advanced German fighters, or push the limits, ignore the rules, and increase their chances of returning alive. The paralysis caused by the AAF's rigid adherence to the 35,000-foot ceiling did not halt advancements. It simply shifted the locus of innovation from Pentagon offices to the maintenance hangars. A select group of highly skilled and resolutely confident pilots, unwilling to remain shackled by outdated regulations, discreetly came together to establish what they called the High Altitude League. Their driving principle was born of wartime necessity: If official clearance to operate above enemy airspace was unattainable, they would create their own solutions and let the outcomes justify the risk. Among this clandestine group were notable figures such as Major Robert Sterling and Captain Sam Jenkins. They joined forces with a network of sympathetic ground crews who shared their conviction that saving lives and gathering critical intelligence justified bypassing antiquated rules. Their modifications, though unauthorized and makeshift by professional engineering standards, were undeniably effective. Aggressive weight-saving measures. Ground crews intensified the F-5's weight reduction program well beyond the standard factory specifications. They stripped out non-essential components such as unnecessary wiring, non-critical armor plating, arguing that altitudes of 40,000 feet provided better protection than any steel, and even layers of paint. When possible, they polished the aircraft's metal exterior to a reflective finish to further reduce drag. Every possible ounce cut was a deliberate step toward increasing speed, altitude, and overall performance. Enhanced oxygen capacity. To counter the looming risk of hypoxia, crews implemented a daring and improvised solution by installing auxiliary oxygen tanks salvaged from damaged aircraft or surplus bombers. These additional oxygen reserves were integrated directly into the pilot's system, enabling them to function in the thin air of the critical zone above 40,000 feet for extended periods, up to 30 or 40 minutes. This critical supply ensured pilots remained mentally sharp during prolonged high-altitude missions over hostile airspace. Improvised flight control safeguards. Aware of the dangers posed by frozen controls at extreme altitudes, ground technicians engineered crude yet effective measures to mitigate such risk. Hydraulic lines connected to key control surfaces were wrapped in extra insulation, while joints and hinges were treated with specialized low-viscosity winter oils repurposed from Arctic equipment. These precautions were essential in maintaining flight stability under freezing conditions. Each modification represented a direct act of insubordination, with failure carrying the possibility of severe punishment, including court-martial. Yet the undeniable success of these missions, evidenced by consistently sharp reconnaissance footage and safe pilot returns, proved the value of the high-altitude league's ingenuity. This underground movement effectively became the unrecorded operational manual for the F-5, demonstrating that in a rapidly evolving battlefield, the resourcefulness and determination of frontline personnel could far exceed the rigid caution imposed by bureaucratic protocols in peacetime. The High Altitude League successfully pushed the operational ceiling of the F-5 aircraft beyond 40,000 feet, enabling it to overcome German fighters. However, this milestone immediately led to facing a far more formidable adversary, the unforgiving thermodynamics of the stratosphere. At cruising altitudes of 43,000 to 45,000 feet, temperatures stabilized at a bone-chilling -50 degrees Celsius and below, severely threatening the core mission of capturing usable photographic intelligence. The foremost challenge arose from the film itself, a delicate material that became critically brittle under extreme cold. Standard military aerial film was rendered so fragile that it often snapped cleanly during rapid advances between exposures or cracked explosively due to static electricity buildup in the dry and freezing air. In addition, the camera mechanisms were compromised. Special lubricants froze or thickened into a tacky sludge, causing the film to slip during exposure cycles. As a result, pilots navigated perilous airspaces with precision only to return with film that was subtly blurred and ultimately unusable. Operational success contrasted sharply with intelligence failure. Major Robert Sterling identified this deep freeze conundrum as the final obstacle standing in the way of mission success. Determined to overcome it, he spearheaded an innovative engineering effort that defied bureaucratic design limitations. Thermal insulation and warm air circulation. Sterling directed the complete insulation of camera bays using heavy felt and asbestos wrap. He also devised a system to recirculate warm air, drawn from the cabin's minimal heating system, continuously flowing around the camera boxes. This ensured the equipment remained slightly warmed, preventing condensation and freezing. Revolution in lubrication. Standard factory lubricants were abandoned at Stirling's behest. His teams adopted specialized low-viscosity silicone oils designed for precision instruments operating in extreme cold. These oils retain their fluidity even at temperatures below -60 degrees Celsius, allowing camera shutters and film transport mechanisms to function smoothly at high altitude. Enhanced film transport modification. To address film breakage, Stirling implemented a simple yet effective modification to the film cartridges. Felt pads were installed at points where the film spooled in and out. These pads were lightly infused with silicone oil, reducing friction and providing protective lubrication for the brittle film during rewinding. Stirling's innovative solutions to combat the cold were developed and refined in dimly lit hangars far from the battlefield. His modifications transformed the F-5 into a reliable aircraft for delivering crystal-clear intelligence essential for Allied strategic planning. Through his ingenuity and determination, he ensured that frontline challenges were met with actionable results, cementing the triumph of operational expertise over standardized engineering limits. The summer of 1943 brought the ultimate test for the cutting-edge innovations developed by the High Altitude League. Intelligence, primarily sourced through British efforts under Operation Crossbow, revealed alarming progress at a secretive German research facility along the Baltic coast, Peenemünde. Here, the infamous V-2 rocket was under development, a weapon capable of wreaking unprecedented devastation on Allied cities. To neutralize this threat, obtaining comprehensive aerial imagery of the site was essential for guiding an effective bombing operation. Captain Sam Jenkins, one of the League's most daring original members, was entrusted with the mission. Piloting his F-5B reconnaissance aircraft, now a marvel of unofficial modifications, Jenkins took off, officially recording a cruising altitude aligned with the standard 35,000 feet. But once safely beyond the North Sea and deep into enemy airspace, he initiated his calculated, unauthorized climb to maximum performance. Pushing the Allison engines to their very limits, Jenkins endured the brutal ascent. The thinning air strained the turbo-superchargers to their breaking point while an unforgiving cold permeated the cockpit. Fighting to maintain focus and control, Jenkins guided the aircraft through 38,000 feet, past 40,000 feet, and eventually leveled out at an astounding 42,000 feet, approximately 12.8 kilometers above sea level. At this altitude, the F-5 entered its prized zone of immunity. German radar operators detected the intrusion and dispatched their finest high-altitude interceptors, advanced Bf-109G fighters. Despite pushing their machines to their maximum capabilities, these aircraft stalled at 37,000 feet, unable to surpass their operational limit. Below him, Jenkins could spot wispy contrails from the enemy fighters tracing futile arcs in the sky, thousands of feet beneath his position. This 5,000-foot gap, less than a mile, acted as an impenetrable barrier between Jenkins and any German counterattack. His position was literally above the silver trails. For 12 minutes over Peenemünde, Jenkins carried out the mission-critical photographic survey with precision. Thanks to Stirling's heating system and silicone-treated camera mechanisms, the equipment performed flawlessly despite the extreme conditions. Jenkins returned with an unprecedented haul, 370 crystal-clear, overlapping images. Analysts were astonished by the level of detail. The photographs revealed the distinctive layout of the V-2 rocket assembly facilities, pinpointed fuel storage tanks for volatile liquid oxygen, and even identified the rail gauge for testing operations. This intelligence enabled Allied planners to determine surgical bombing coordinates that led to a decisive victory during Operation Crossbow. The raids successfully disrupted the V-2 program, delaying its operational deployment by 6 pivotal months. Jenkins's flight marked a defining moment for the High Altitude League. It proved that reaching unapproachable heights was not merely a technical achievement but a strategic advantage capable of reshaping critical battles in the war. Following the remarkable success of the Piedmont mission, the F-5 Lightning transitioned from a risky experimental aircraft to an essential asset of the Allied military strategy. It became the indispensable eye of the war effort, pivotal in shaping the execution of two major European offensives, Operation Overlord in Normandy and Operation Dragoon in southern France. Its purpose evolved from identifying isolated strategic targets to assembling an extensive tactical intelligence archive, a detailed visual map of Hitler's fortress Europe. In the months leading to D-Day, F-5 pilots operating from bases in England and later Corsica undertook meticulously coordinated flights over the entire French coastline. Their task was to create a complete photographic mosaic that invasion planners urgently required. Operating at altitudes between 40,000 and 45,000 feet, these pilots captured tens of thousands of oblique and vertical photographs. These images were later processed, analyzed, and combined into an unprecedented visual overview that delivered critical insights unattainable through ground reconnaissance. This intelligence uncovered key details essential for planning the invasion: beach defenses and obstacles. Analysts utilized stereo pairs of F-5 images to measure the exact height and composition of the formidable Atlantic Wall fortifications. They also identified the locations and types of underwater mines and anti-tank barriers deployed by German forces in tidal zones. Artillery positions and logistics. Deep penetration missions exposed concealed locations of mobile long-range artillery batteries and their associated ammunition depots. This allowed for precise pre-invasion bombardment, significantly enhancing battlefield effectiveness. The F-5 played an equally vital role in Operation Dragoon, the strategically important but less celebrated amphibious assault in southern France. Critical attention was given to the Rhône River Valley, the key north-south logistical artery. The F-5's high-altitude imagery, enhanced by unapproved yet ingenious thermal modifications, delivered remarkably clear photographs. Intelligence teams were able to pinpoint vital targets such as railway bridges, marshalling yards, and tunnel entrances. This data enabled Allied air forces to execute a successful interdiction campaign that shattered German efforts to send reinforcements north to bolster their collapsing defenses in Normandy. The impact of aerial reconnaissance in the Rhône Valley campaign alone was immense, reportedly saving weeks of grueling ground combat. It highlighted how the F-5's capabilities transformed wartime tactics, acting as a force multiplier and a strategic tool that redefined where battles would be fought or avoided entirely. Designed to elude direct confrontation, the unarmed F-5 ultimately became one of the most decisive instruments in determining the course of combat in the European theater. The recurring appearance and subsequent disappearance of the high-flying, untouchable silver fish within critical airspace caused significant alarm within the Luftwaffe High Command. It became starkly evident that the Allies had secured a decisive and systematic advantage in the vertical dimension of aerial warfare. This realization triggered an urgent and costly internal initiative, dubbed the German altitude race, redirecting valuable engineering expertise and manufacturing capacity toward the development of specialized countermeasures. Efforts quickly concentrated on producing altitude hunters, interceptor fighters specifically designed to challenge this vertical disparity. Focke-Wulf FW-190D9 Dora. This model was equipped with the powerful Jumo 213 liquid-cooled engine, which offered enhanced performance at higher altitudes compared to the conventional air-cooled BMW engines. Messerschmitt Bf 109G high-altitude conversions. These variants were modified extensively through aggressive weight reduction programs, stripping away non-essential armor, heavy internal armaments, and other components to decrease mass and improve their rate of climb. The resulting German interceptors could theoretically operate at altitudes nearing 40,000 feet. However, this achievement came with a major limitation. the FW-190D and modified Bf-109G, while able to reach 40,000 feet, were barely functional at that height. At their absolute operational ceiling, they were unstable, plagued by significantly reduced maneuverability, and flying at the edge of both mechanical performance and pilot endurance. German airmen, often lacking the rigorous training and dependable oxygen systems available to their American counterparts, faced dire challenges, pushing both their aircraft and their physical limits to precarious extremes. Meanwhile, the F-5 Lightning stood in stark contrast. Its stripped-down, unarmed configuration, alongside several unofficial performance tweaks, allowed it to sustain a comfortable operational altitude between 42,000 and 45,000 feet. When German radar identified its presence and scrambled interceptors to confront it, the F-5 could respond with a calculated yet effortless climb. The resulting altitude gap, 2,000 to 5,000 feet, was an insurmountable obstacle for the Luftwaffe's pilots. Straining upwards, they could catch only fleeting glimpses of the F-5's contrail shimmering high above them, while fully aware that any further attempt to follow would risk engine failure or loss of control in the extreme cold. The F-5's true advantage lay not in combat but in its unreachable altitude, a vexing reminder to its adversaries that critical intelligence now resided permanently beyond their reach. The German response, though determined and resourceful, proved unable to overturn the central principle of the high-altitude league. To fly higher was to eliminate the need to fight altogether. The steady supply of top-tier intelligence collected by the F-5 Lightning instigated a subtle yet transformative shift in mindset among the leadership of the Pentagon and the Army Air Force's Bureau of Aeronautics. By the latter half of 1944, the conclusion was inescapable. The essential information needed to target V weapons, plan invasions, and disrupt German supply lines was being secured exclusively by pilots who, by official standards, were flagrantly disregarding safety regulations. This created a complex dilemma for the AAF, balancing political accountability with military necessity. Publicly admitting that their operational success hinged on widespread rule-breaking was unthinkable, yet grounding the high-altitude missions was not an option either. The improvised solution was a concept known internally as the rule of the useful mistake. A pragmatic, behind-the-scenes acknowledgement cloaked in bureaucratic subtlety. Public denial with quiet approval. Officially, the F-5's operational ceiling remained capped at 35,000 feet, safeguarding the integrity of its specifications and ensuring that operational secrecy was upheld. Revealing the aircraft's true capability would have tipped off German intelligence to its full potential. A coded green light. Behind closed doors, a classified internal memo was dispatched to all F-5 squadron commanders. This directive granted pilots wide latitude to operate within the full operational envelope of the aircraft in mission-critical scenarios. In practice, this meant pilots were unofficially authorized to push up to 45,000 feet when necessary. To preserve deniability, they were instructed to log their flights at 35,000 feet no matter their actual altitude, maintaining a falsified official record. Normalizing ingenuity. The innovative fixes devised by Major Sterling and Captain Jenkins, such as specialized low-viscosity silicone oils, enhanced camera bay heating systems, and additional oxygen plumbing, were quietly codified into updated field maintenance manuals. What had started as unauthorized modifications became officially endorsed enhancements, acknowledging frontline ingenuity without ever conceding its improvised origins. Significantly, no member of the so-called High-Altitude League was reprimanded, despite their clear violation of formal orders. Instead, they were showered with accolades like exceptional service, medals, and commendations for meritorious achievement, subtle yet unmistakable recognition of their effectiveness and courage. This tacit acceptance underscored an unspoken truth. In a war where survival hinged on decisive action, operational success and innovation, achieved even through rule-breaking, ultimately outweighed any fear of bureaucratic reprimand. This quiet evolution marked a defining moment, where pragmatism triumphed over rigid adherence to protocol in the service of a higher goal. As World War II in Europe came to an end in 1945, the F-5 Lightning quietly slipped from public attention. Though it never fired a weapon, its contribution was immense, marked by an invisible victory achieved at extraordinary altitudes. The aircraft's true legacy lay not in aerial combat victories, but in the critical intelligence it gathered and the strategic edge it provided. The post-war analysis highlighted the F-5's pivotal role. Information superiority. The F-5 was credited with capturing approximately 80% of all high-resolution strategic reconnaissance imagery over Europe from mid-1944 onward. This intelligence enabled Allied bombers to shift from broad, area-based attacks to precision strikes on industrial targets, significantly increasing operational efficiency while conserving resources. Disruption of V-weapons. High-altitude imagery from the F-5 offered definitive evidence that allowed Allied forces to pinpoint and eliminate over 20 key sites related to the German V-weapon program, including research, production, and launch facilities. These missions, often conducted in defiance of official orders by the so-called High-Altitude League, were instrumental in neutralizing the Nazi terror weapon initiative, saving countless lives across Britain. Low casualty rates. Operating at altitudes between 40,000 and 45,000 feet, above the reach of most enemy defenses, F-5 squadrons suffered remarkably low losses, often under 5% per mission. This stood in stark contrast to the devastating 40% attrition rates endured by mid-altitude reconnaissance flights just a year earlier. The F-5 proved that altitude truly served as a form of armor. A lasting legacy. The operational lessons and technical advancements gained through F-5 missions went on to shape the future of high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft. Kelly Johnson, the lead designer of the P-38, used insights from F-5 pilots and their field modifications as key inspirations for developing new systems. This experience directly influenced the design of the Lockheed U-2 spy plane in the 1950s, a Cold War-era icon. The concept that altitude replaces armament, along with innovations to ensure performance in extreme conditions, became central tenets guiding future aircraft design. The story of the F-5 Lightning's secretive missions is a compelling testament to the power of ingenuity on the front lines and the ability to challenge convention. It underscores how calculated risks, taken by a bold few willing to prioritize the mission over red tape, can quietly reshape history and secure significant global victories.